At last, wildcard week is here for me. I've seen all you guys play your wildcard in game week 6. I waited until game week 8. Now it's time to hit that button. Okay, so let's start with the keeper and defense for this week. And let's start with the keepers first, because the defense weren't too bad. The Bravka cells, there was 1 point in it. If you look at expected goals conceded, Burnley still conceded a lower amount of expected goals than Nottingham Forest. I still back my decision to start the Burnley man. Of course, Cells outscored him by 1, but who really cares? 1 point, it's not really going to end my season. The next man, Pedro Porro, 7-pointer. I'll be honest, very, very fortunate with that 7-pointer, because if you watch the assist, again, it was just a ball over the top, but so lucky. It was an FPL assist, not an actual assist, which is, listen, just shows you how lucky I got with that. And Defcon, literally last second of the game, he got Defcon. So that 7-pointer, very, very lucky. But just by the way, I think I said it on the team selection video, I'm not too sure, but Leeds are a very, very impressive unit. Like, Daniel Farke, I feel like going into the season, a lot of people said, yeah, Leeds were going to go straight down. But they've been so impressive. And I'm going to speak about it on maybe one of the future videos in terms of wildcard. There are a couple of Leeds players that I'm eyeing up. Some of them I know you're going to disagree with straight away. But listen, not too bad. For Pedro Porro, 7-pointer. Chris Richards, 3-pointer. The unbeaten run came to an end. Listen, it was a bit of a shock. But at the same time, Everton are a very good side. He did get Defcon, which is obviously very, very nice. And that's, like I always say, if my Defcon defenders can get Defcon, it just raises my floor of my side. And listen, 3-pointer, not really going to complain. Especially considering who broke Crystal Palace's clean sheet. So I'm happy with that. Timber, 11-pointer. And you guys are going to be saying, Baines, you got Timber. I thought you had Gabriel. So this is why I said on the team selection video, I'm going to wait until Friday for Arteta's news conference. And Arteta on Friday regarding Gabriel, like, he just didn't give me... Like, I expected Gabriel to start, by the way, on the weekend, but it wasn't like a definite, yes, Gabriel's going to play kind of thing, innit? Which is why I was like, you know what, let me just... There's no point. Before wildcard in game week 8, why am I going to take the risk? Let me just bring in a different Arsenal defender. And it was either between Timber and Calafiori, and I went with Timber, by the way, just because I was looking at the data, and I sent this to Levin, by the way, you've seen on the channel before. In 3 of, before this week, so 3 of the opening 6 games, Timber's had an XG of over 0.3. That is incredible for a defender. And obviously, I was watching the United game, but I was keeping tabs on the Arsenal game. The first 10 minutes, Timber had already had 2 shots. Like, are we deeping how good Timber's attacking numbers are? And I'm going to do a video on him in a couple days' time, because it is so impressive. And on the wildcard, I'll be honest, Gabriel is probably a must. I'm leaning towards Saka right now, which I'll touch on a bit later. I'm working on ways to squeeze Timber in, because I really want him. And a Timber 11-pointer, very, very impressive. Was, I think, 1 or 2 away from Defcon, so that was slightly unfortunate, but obviously won the penalty. Not really going to complain. Outscored Gabriel, which was obviously the dilemma that I had this week. So, listen, 11-pointer from Timber, very happy. Let's move over to the midfield. Midfield, I'll be honest, was an absolute disaster this week. It started on Friday with Semenyo, 18-pointer. Obviously, last week I had a dilemma. Am I going to bring Semenyo? Am I going to bring in Brian Mbeumo? And I went with a Manchester United man in Brian Mbeumo. And I'll be honest, I regret that decision massively. Because after that 18-pointer, I just knew this was going to be a long week. But to be honest, I actually thought that Bournemouth-Fulham game was quite a tight. I don't think, let's say, that 18-pointer was necessarily warranted. Of course, Semenyo got it, so I'm not... Listen, of course I'm frustrated, but what can you do? The reason I say that is, I said it on the video, I think on the team selection video, or maybe one of the previous videos. Games where teams can match, let's say, Bournemouth's physical levels or physicality levels, Bournemouth tend to struggle in those sort of games. And for the first 75, 80 minutes, listen, Bournemouth obviously, or Fulham competed, let's say, with Bournemouth very, very well. Obviously, they had a 1-0 lead going into towards the back end of the game. And then Semenyo, that first goal, magic. And the one thing I've said about Semenyo is, the reason that makes him, or reason why Semenyo's such a good FPL asset in my eyes and such a good player is, he's probably the best player or one of the best players in the Premier League at creating separation. Both he can create separation so well to get a shot off. He even had a shot in the first half, for example, and the keeper saved it, Leno, where it was literally 1-2 bang shot off. Literally, he only had half a yard, and I think it was on his left foot, and he got a shot off. Like, that's what makes Semenyo so elite in my eyes. And listen, 18-pointer, slightly frustrating, especially when you look at the assist as well. The assist was a pass to Justin Clive. I think that Justin Clive shot was a 0.02 XG shot. There was a 2% chance of that going in statistically, and it goes in. Like, it was a... Listen, I'm jealous, I'll be honest. Let me stop waffling. I am very jealous. I'm frustrated, but listen, what can you do? Let's start with the midfield, actually, because I feel like that 1 minute was just for me to cry about Semenyo, who probably will be on my wildcard now. Saying that, he actually weren't in my initial plans, but now I kind of have to because I know everyone's going to be looking at me sideways if I don't bring him in. But Elliot Anderson 1 pointer, very, very frustrating. Again, got a yellow card. And also, I think he was 2 away from DEFCON, so slightly frustrating, especially considering Newcastle. You expected them to, let's say, be a bit more fatigued coming after Europe. Very frustrating. Phil Foden, another one. Very, very frustrating in terms of City probably... The second half City weren't, let's say, great. The first half, I think Foden had like 5 shots and none of them go in. Like, of course, like some of the shots were obviously not, let's say, I think 3 of them got blocked. I'm not going to say they were clear-cut chances, but obviously when you bring in Phil Foden for a 2-week punt, considering Manchester City won both games, Phil Foden's record against Brentford, I think the last 6 goals scored at Brentford Stadium before obviously today were all done by Phil Foden, by Manchester City player. So that is slightly frustrating. Brian Mbeumo 6-pointer. Nice assist to obviously makes him out for the goal. Again, I feel like that was very, very frustrating because United actually, this was probably United's best performance of the season. And probably United's best performance under Ruben Amorim. I thought United were very, very impressive. And one thing I would say is I do think Brian Mbeumo is a fine FPL asset. I think going forward, United, let's say, have some stability in the attack because you're seeing what Benjamin Sesko brings to that attack. And I feel like he's a massive improvement in terms of what they had last year with Haaland. I'm very impressed with Sesko, by the way. Like, probably not an FPL asset just because obviously you probably don't trust United as a whole. He obviously don't have penalties, don't have, let's say, multiple routes to points. But listen, United's attack should look a lot more stable going forward. In the I7 pointer, again, that was nice because, like we said, we expected him to be on penalties and it was good confirmation that he's on penalties. 7-pointer, obviously, listen, it was either a 7-pointer for Ndiaye or my clean sheet from Chris Richards. I'm going to take the Ndiaye points because I think he's lower owned than Crystal Palace's assets. Not too sure what I think of him going forward in terms of Everton, obviously, game week 8, they have Manchester City. He's still a fine FPL asset in my eyes in terms of he's going to get the odd DEFCON point. He's on penalties. He's paying for, let's say, a massively improved offensive Everton attack. And also, I feel like I was slightly unfortunate. Like, if you guys see the second goal by Grealish, Ndiaye puts in a beautiful ball. I think it was better with the initial header. It better scores that. That's Ndiaye assist. And then what? We're looking at 3 bonus. And then that's probably what? A potential 13-pointer, 12-pointer? Very, very unfortunate. But what can you do? Bruno again. 3-pointer. Very... I'll probably say that was justified. I think Bruno Fernandes had like one, let's say, decent chance where Ruth made a decent save. Actually, more than a decent save. It was a phenomenal save. But listen, what can you do? He's probably not going to be on my wildcard. I still think he's a fine FPL asset, by the way. But listen... That's the midfield. And the attack. Again, slightly frustrating in terms of Erling Haaland. First of all, let's start with Erling Haaland, actually. That goal that he scores. I don't think there's anyone in the Premier League that can score the goal. The way he can bully defenders, it's incredible. And the form that he's playing at right now, like I said, he's a must on a wildcard. Who else is a must? I don't know yet, which is why we'll discuss that shortly. João Pedro is the other one. Again... I'm not too sure what I think of João Pedro right now as an FPL asset because I don't think I'm seeing enough over, like, let's say, the last 3 games. And even when he was getting FPL returns, I kept saying I'm not really convinced about João Pedro as an FPL asset compared to, like, let's say, what his ownership says. But at the same time, Chelsea's fixtures coming up are obviously very, very good. So this is another dilemma that I have in the wildcard. Am I going to keep João Pedro or am I not going to keep João Pedro? There is someone that I want to talk about in that Chelsea-Liverpool game, first of all. That is Enzo Fernandez. I was very, very impressed with Enzo in terms of that more advanced role. He times his run so well. And I said it on a previous video. I'm not too sure how my midfield is going to look like for the wild card yet. But he is definitely a valid contender for my team. But listen, I ended up with 61 points this week. A red arrow of around 400,000, which, listen, I expected the red arrow going into this weekend. There was, especially after that Friday night, not having Senesi, not having Semenyo. Listen, it was a big ask. But listen, at 61 points, I feel like I clawed it back slightly. Not too bad, but listen, let's look at my rough ideas for a wildcard now for game week 8. Okay, so the wildcard has been activated. I activated it Friday night, like I said I would. And I'll be honest, the players, first of all, let me say this. The players that you're seeing on the screen right now, the ones that you can actually see, are probably more than likely 90% plus locked. The other players that you can see on screen, for example, Timber, Rodon, Burn, Starch, Minte, I don't even know why. The only reason I had them is because there might be contenders for my team further down in terms of the wild card. But as more Friday night, a lot of these players are rising. For example, Minty, I think Rose. I think Rogdon was close to rising. Burn might have been close to rising. Timber might be close to rising today, which is why I brought some of these guys in. I think Gyökeres rose to 9.1. That's the only reason I have them in. Like, they're not definites on the wild card. They're just potential contenders. That's what I'm going to say, which is why I obviously brought them in for the price rise. But the players that you can see on screen right now are probably more than likely going to be my team. Haaland speaks for itself. Saka, again, very, very impressed with his performance against West Ham. I think the only thing I would say on Saka as well is he's going to have his share of penalties. I'm not going to say he's Arsenal's definite penalty taker, even though Gyökeres was on the pitch, because obviously we saw Saka's quote here. It doesn't seem like Saka is saying, yes, I am Arsenal's #1 penalty taker. I think Gyökeres will have his share. And listen, Saka said he was just feeling to take a penalty, which is why he did it. So that probably fills me with more confidence. And I feel like a lot of people that wildcarding in game week 6, for example, are going to have Gyökeres. How are they going to pivot towards Saka? Probably by taking up Bruno Fernandes, for example. But listen, is a good enough differential from a game week 6 wildcard, if that makes sense, isn't it? Semenyo, again, I actually don't think this is the perfect entry point. I know I'm going to sound like a Semenyo hater, but Crystal Palace, I think, listen, they are a very, very tough side. I think the games after that look tough for Bournemouth on paper, but at the same time, though a lot of those games are transition-based games for Bournemouth in my eyes, and I feel like Semenyo, we saw it in game week 1 against Liverpool, unbelievable transitional player, which is why he's probably still going to be my team. So again, Crystal Palace look very, very good. 90-minute man, more than likely most weeks. Playing for a good side. Main talisman, let's say offensively. I'm probably going to have Salah in my team. Chris Richards, again, Defcon monster. Plays for a very, very good defense. Senesi, Defcon monster. And Dubravka obviously speaks for itself, 4 million keeper. The rest of my team, I'm not too sure. I feel like there's a lot of combinations that you can go for. For example, in midfield, the likes of Paqueta, Enzo Fernandez, Anthony Gordon are contenders. Attack, João Pedro is a contender. Gyökeres is a potential contender, even though more than likely I won't have him in my wildcard. Bowen, I like. Strand Lawson's fixtures over the next 2 are good. Sunderland and Burnley. Who else? Dominic Calvert-Lewin is a contender because, as I said, I'm very, very impressed with Leeds right now. 5.5 budget forward. I'm going to have a play around with it, guys. But these are plays that more than likely are going to be my team. Defensively, again, there's a lot of people are going to say you don't have Gabriel. Gabriel, let's say, is like an 85% lock in my team, in my eyes, kind of thing, isn't it? It's just about if I want to go Gabriel and, let's say, Timber, or Gabriel and Raya. The reason I'm probably leaning towards, let's say, the first combination of Gabriel and Timber is I really, really like Nick Pope. Nick Pope's like baseline bonus is like very, very impressive for a keeper, if you guys haven't known. So that's why I'm probably leaning towards Pope. Let's say Pope, Timber, and Gabriel. But as I said, that's not locked in. These plays are locked in. Tomorrow, I'm going to make my first wildcard draw. But listen, I just wanted to give you like a small idea in terms of what I'm thinking for my wildcard. Also, if you are thinking about hitting your wildcard in game week 8, listen, don't think. Just hit it now. Otherwise, you're going to miss the price rises. And it's probably going to be quite a lot, especially during the international break. So listen, don't miss out. But listen, if you guys enjoyed the video, first of all, how many times have I said listen to this video? I feel like the listen counter must be crazy. And I know someone mentioned it on a previous video as well. I don't know why I do that, but listen, I said it again. Make sure you guys like the video, comment your thoughts on my team, subscribe to the channel, and we will be back soon.